Be seated. When you hear the word sabbatical, most people think of that enviable year-long break that academics get in universities every 7 years or so, where they don't have to teach and they get to, you know, do research. But long before universities saw the value of this kind of time off, our Torah instituted this radical, equalizing, sacred time of a sabbatical year known as the Shemitah, a full year every 7 years where the land lies fallow and debts are forgiven. Many of you know that I was gifted a sabbatical of 4 months by this congregation that was to have started in March. Well, it clearly was not in the cards or in God's plan. Hopefully, at some point, I'll take it later. But in a very strange way, I actually feel like that we are all taking sabbatical, in a sense, together right now. I don't mean that all of us have stopped working. Some are working harder than ever. But every one of us has had to stop doing many of the things that we were accustomed to doing. We've seen a cessation of our evening events in our calendars, an enforced pause in so many things in our lives. And the land is also getting a rest. And something amazing is happening. The skies are clearing up around the world. And the world is getting a vision of how quickly the earth can repair herself if given the chance. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that all of this has come at a tremendous cost. The 30 million Americans who are out of work and worrying about where their meals are coming from, the many, many people who have lost loved ones. We wouldn't choose this pandemic sabbatical. It was thrust upon us. But among the things that we can control, because there is so much that feels out of our control in this time, what we can control is how this fallow time, that in this fallow time, we might still glean and harvest new understandings for our lives and what we truly value. When this ancient law of Shemitah was instituted, it also came at a great price. In biblical Israel, practically everyone was involved in agriculture in one form or another, and the Shemitah shut down businesses completely for a full year. It was such a huge economic burden that the literal practice of a full sabbatical year collapsed by the time of the destruction of the Second Temple. Essentially, a true sabbatical hasn't been practiced for centuries. But that doesn't mean that the moral aspiration of the Torah's radical idea of a sabbatical for everyone and for the land, what my colleague Rabbi Fred Dobbs calls Shemitah consciousness, it doesn't mean that that's not worth preserving in some ways. This includes the quest for environmental sustainability, the demand for greater equality for all people, second chances for people who deserve them, and social justice and spiritual renewal embedded in all the values of what a sabbatical, a Shemitah year was all about. And lest you think that Shemitah consciousness is some kind of modern, eco-crunchy, liberal innovation, I want you to know that even when our ancestors were not able to practice the sabbatical literally, either because they weren't living in the land of Israel or because they were no longer farmers, they aspired to find ways to practice the principles of giving the land and the people rest and renewal. On Abby Pogrebin's Parsha in Progress podcast, I heard these wonderful words from an Orthodox rabbi of the 19th century, Rabbi Rav Kook, the first chief rabbi of Israel. He wrote, "Life can only be perfected through the affording of a breathing space from the bustle of everyday life. The individual shakes himself free from ordinary weekday life at short and regular intervals every Sabbath. What the Sabbath achieves regarding the individual, the Shemitah achieves with regard to the nation as a whole. A year of solemn rest is essential for both the nation and the land, a year of peace and quiet, of equality and rest, in which the soul reaches out towards divine justice, towards God, who sustains the living creatures with loving kindness. Now, that is a Shemitah consciousness worth preserving and fighting for. Now, during this time of enforced sabbatical, one of the things I have been able to do is cook a lot more. I mean, I guess I've had to do it, but I've also really enjoyed it. So I bought myself a mandolin slicer. That thing is a little death machine, by the way. Yesterday, I was slicing cucumbers and I sliced off a very sizable piece of the top of my finger, clear off. It was deep enough and gushing enough blood that I had to call a close friend of mine who was a doctor. And in a panic, I said, "What do I do?" He told me, "You're going to live." Phew. And he also let me know, thankfully, that I did not need to go to the hospital. I was grateful for that. After I got over my own lightheadedness and my mini trauma, I was in the state of mind to ask him how he was doing. And he replied, "Well, it's been really challenging. You know, last year I was really hitting my stride. I was busy and working hard and building my practice. And now it's not just that I haven't been working for the last 2 months, but I'm still paying my employees and watching the bank account drain. And it's still probably going to be another month before I'm allowed to do surgeries. If I were to quantify how much I have spent and the opportunity cost of all the lost work in the last few months, it would be a very sizable number. Thinking about the economic impact is very stressful." He continued, "But this enforced sabbatical has also given me some real perspective and gifts." He said, "If I were to imagine myself near the end of my life and an angel were to come to me and say that for that sizable amount of money that I could have the opportunity to have 3 months completely off, that I would not have to wake up at the crack of dawn for surgeries, that I would make breakfast every day for my kids and have dinner with my family every night, that I would get this pause right in the prime of my life, right when my kids were at this precious age, well, I can tell you right now that I would very willingly pay that sum to have this priceless time now." So even as I worry about all the very real things that I worry about, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that this time is a real gift. Shemitah, it literally means radical release. This period of time for all of us has been a very radical release of control of many things that we love. But my prayer is that this Shemitah can also be a time for radical renewal.